The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
I am super pumped, man. Was looking to stop traveling so much, I was traveling like all over the place, and like not only was it taxing on my finances, it was taxing on my marriage and relationships and whatnot, because I was always gone. And I wanted to have like a network here in LA. It's like I'm from here, but I didn't know anybody here. It's like all the networks that I had were outside of the state. And so I went to that class on Monday with Noah Aon, and then I met you there, and then I had already hooked up with Troy, and so we had already had a podcast scheduled, and I was like, man, that was totally awesome. I'm so glad I went. And so here we are. And then I got your message, and just so you know, I'm sure people that listen to my podcast know, I don't ever do any research on people I podcast with, like very little. And that's my intention, that I just do it on purpose. Like I don't want to know too much, because I feel like it takes away from our conversation. But the message that you sent me the other day was absolutely beautiful and like perfect. I was like, wow, totally in alignment with what I want to talk about. Totally like right on the path of getting real, And so I want you to share your story, your upbringing, what that was like, some of the things that you experienced along the way, and how Man Tribe was born, what the mission is of Man Tribe, where you guys see it going, and and we'll just take it from there. I'll ask questions as we go.
Sure.
Yeah, man. So take it away, Alexander.
Yeah, happy to be here and happy to be discussing this with you. And getting real is one of my favorite things to do.
Right.
So, very grateful. And where does it all begin? I'm from New York City. I was born and raised in New York City.
Yeah.
Born in Mount Sinai Hospital on the island of Manhattan. Grew up in a place called Riverdale, which is the north part of the Bronx.
Okay.
I went to high school in the Bronx, a public school.
Oh, wow.
And, high school was pretty hard for me. I had two really great parents. They were both teachers, and they were athletic administrators, so they were both coaches and competitive athletes themselves. They were triathletes, and my mom competed a lot in triathlon and running also. They were both marathon runners. So I had a very competitive sports-related upbringing. I was always doing sports and always very active, and it seemed like that ran in my family.
Yeah.
We would go camping, and we would do things, and we were a happy young family.
Yeah.
And then I think things started to shift when I was around 13 or 14, and my parents' marriage started to get challenged by a number of things, finances and, just life, as many people can relate to,
Yeah.
Over 50% divorce or 60% divorce in the United States. So I'm sure a lot of people out there have been through their parents getting divorced, and so as did I. And, I think my heart didn't understand that. When I was 14 or 15 years old, I didn't understand why, they couldn't make their marriage work, because I loved each of them for who they were. And it just didn't make sense to me. Say, why can't these two people love each other, and why is this so complicated? Why is this so confusing? It didn't make sense to my inner child.
Right.
And, there were a lot of things, in my teenage years that didn't make any sense to me. High school, I was one of the only white kids in my high school. So, my name was White Boy, and sometimes my name was Rich White Boy, and I wasn't even that rich, but
comparatively, though, you probably were.
Yeah,
right?
in the Bronx, in a school of mostly, Hispanic and Black and, immigrants, first wave immigrants to the United States, to New York City, I was the person that they pointed their finger at, because, and it makes sense. And I have no resentment or anything, about that. But it's really interesting to look at that socially, looking at that economically, socioeconomically, and to understand, what it's like to be the only white kid in a public school in the Bronx.
Yep.
So that made me. It presented a lot of challenges. There were times where I was really, really scared to walk through the hallway, just because there were just people that didn't like me because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
Or just you know, I couldn't have any arrogance or any ego or anything, because I would, you know, I would put my life in danger.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of my expression, a lot of my personal expression was halted and was suppressed because of that.
Yeah.
And I would just bottle it all up. I was bottling up, you know, my parents, you know, challenges in their divorce. I was bottling up, you know, those challenges I had at school, being, you know, the minority in my school, and everything was just bottling up inside me. I had no way to express myself. I would rap, you know, I would freestyle rap.
Nice.
And that was like my way of, you know, fitting in. And I was pretty damn good at it too.
Yeah.
But if I got too good and I started beating the guys, you know, in the high school, you know, I was put in my place. It was like, yo, white boy, step back. Or
Yeah.
watch yourself, check yourself, don't go there with us.
Right.
You know, this is our show, or whatever, you know, because there were gangs in my school and it was real, you know, and we're getting real right here, right now.
You know, it's funny. I grew up in Rialto. I don't know if you know where Rialto is, but like part of my life was there. And it was kind of the same thing where I went from Temple City, which is like predominantly Caucasian, in kindergarten, and then first, second, third, and a little bit of fourth grade were spent in Rialto, where like, dude, I was like the only white kid there almost.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some white people there, but like our neighborhood, pretty positive that we were the only white family there. And so that was tough, you know, it was challenging. But I think it gave me a better understanding of life, giving me a better understanding of culture, and yeah, it just made me a little bit different. You know what I mean? I think I was open and exposed to things that some of my friends, like, that I know now, that they've never been exposed to.
Totally.
You know, so they're totally jaded, you know, because they don't know.
It's amazing, you know, everything that is a challenge, or everything that, you know, can bring about a little bit of pain, once you go on that healing journey, you realize it can all be turned to gold.
Right.
And all of these instances and all of these experiences are just so beautiful, you know, because it's all perfect. We were put there for a reason. And, you know, it's like my mom was like, you know, we should send him to a, you know, private school, and, you know, we're going to work extra hours to send our kid to a, you know, a rich private school. And I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, because as hard as it may have been to go to that school that I went to, it just made me who I am.
Right.
And it really, you know, it forged the iron in the fire. And I feel like the strength that I carry today, and just the person that I am, is a lot of that, those formative years shaped who I am.
Yeah, there's such a grittiness to guys and girls that grew up in that kind of stuff. You know, you growing up in the Bronx. You know, my one of my best friends to this day was a guy I was in the military with. They grew up in Hell's Kitchen, and he just has a different kind of vibe to him. You know what I mean? The most passive, awesome dude, but he'll rip your head off. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of those guys because he just grew up that way. You know, where it's like you grow up on the streets taking the subway and you're fighting all the time, and like you're like basically fighting for your life on a regular basis. So he has a different mentality, you know. So when you see him, like I said, he's like a gentle giant. You know, he's got 23-inch arms. You know, he's like a little bulldog, super passive and cool. But like, dude, if you piss him off, forget about it, you know. And like, we were actually in Hell's Kitchen, and when we were in the military, he was an older brother to me. So like, he taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. He was married with a kid, so he was keeping me out of trouble, you know. And because I would go spend the weekends with him. And I went out to Hell's Kitchen to hang out with them, and we went to the bars, we were hanging out, and then on the way back to our car, there was an altercation with somebody, and like words were being said, and one of the guys said something about his mother and my mother, you know. And like, where I come from is like, you talk about my mom, it's like whatever, you know. But on the East Coast, like, you don't talk about people's mamas, dude. Like you're gonna fight for sure. So this big fight broke out, and I got to see firsthand all that aggression that he had been holding on to for years come out, you know. Do you think, like, now where you are in your life, experiencing all the things that you did, do you think you still hold on to some of that, like, aggressive nature inside of you? Like, where it's like, or do you think you've let it all out, where it's like, it's not, I think we all have that killer inside of us, you know, but like, do you have it under control, do you think? Are you fearful of your, like, own anger?
You know, there's something that's always been, you know, when I'm in my heart is when I'm in my most authentic power.
Right.
And my heart is my inner child, and I listen to my heart, and I listen to my inner child that I find through meditation. And when that child speaks, you know, he says, if you go all in on being yourself, you'll never have to worry about anything else.
Right.
And when I'm in my heart, I'm truly in my power.
Yeah.
and really, you know, in the depths of my heart, I know that I will never have to fight in this lifetime.
Right.
And I've been in altercations, I've been arrested, I've had to fight in this lifetime. I can actually affirm now that I will not have to physically defend myself.
Yeah.
In an altercation, and it's almost like I'm no longer attracting that energy of altercation or argument or confrontation, and especially not physically.
Right.
I'm sure I'll get in, I shouldn't even say that, but like, you know, getting in verbal arguments or getting in heated disputes or arguments could be healthy and they could be part of the path, but getting in something where my life is being threatened, I'm not calling that into my existence anymore.
It's funny, man. That just I just had an incident like that, and I was on the same like tip as you, like where it's like I used to be fighting all the time. I've been to jail. I've done that path, you know, and it's not who I am and what I am anymore. I have no interest in fighting anybody, and I do believe that I was attracting a lot of that negativity into my life. But sometimes, like, you can't control what's going on the outside and other people's lives. And so recently, I had an incident where, with my 12-year-old son, you know, he called me and said, "Hey, I need you to come get me. You know, there's some issues going on at my mom's, and I need you to come get me." And I was like, well, I mean, there's a court order. I have to follow the court order. I can't just come get you. You know what I mean? It's like kidnapping. So I was like, well, what do I do? I was like, well, I'll call the cops. I'll bring the court order with me, and I'll just go get him. If he feels unsafe, I got to go take care of him. So I go and do that, and in the process, I had my ex's, you know, husband and her dad like threatening my life, like pounding on my car, threatening my life with my son right there.
Right.
And I never thought in a million years I'd ever be in that situation again, you know. But these are people that are not in the same state that I am. And so I was like, well, this is an opportunity. Like, I can get out of this car right now and let this savage out, sure. But then what does that teach my son? You know what I mean? Like, he's asking me to save him from chaos, and now I've become a part of it. And I'd say and I was just talking to my buddy about this on the way here. For about 3 weeks after that, I was like emotional about it, like super emotional. And I've been working with a spiritual teacher, and I was asking him, I was like, why am I so emotional about this? Like, why is this like, it's like choking me up when I think about it. And he's like, well, because like, you have a knowing internally in you that like you could have handled that like in a savage way, and that energy didn't go anywhere. You just bottled it. You had to bottle it for the safety of your son, and like you had to like do breath work and kind of whatever. But you never moved that energy. You got to move it. And so yeah, that's what I've been doing the last like couple weeks, just like moving that like savage energy, because
ice bath, baby.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and I've been taking. It's funny because I would start doing the cold showers, and because of my back, like the 6 back surgeries, the cold showers would get me. I would get like knots down my spine and whatever. I'm like, why does this keep happening? You know, my muscles are all tensed up. I was like, I'm not breathing into it. I'm so tense while I'm in there. My toes are tensed up. Everything's tensed up. And since that altercation or whatever, I've been taking cold showers every day, and I have 0 issues because I'm breathing into it. I'm doing my breath of fire before I even go into the shower first thing in the morning, and it's a totally different experience now.
You know, yeah, we're in control of so much more than we even give ourselves credit for.
Definitely.
Like we really control and call our own realities into existence. And you know, I'm not going to lie. A few months ago, there was this altercation in the Costco parking lot. There were 2 spots available, and then there was some guy in a pickup truck with his wife. And you know, for some reason, I took one spot and he took the other spot. But maybe I took the spot first or something, and it was the spot that he wanted, or. Who knows?
Right.
Like I couldn't even comprehend how this man was mad at me.
Right.
But sure enough, he was ready to fight.
Yeah.
And he got in my face, and I just my heart started pounding a little bit because I naturally, you know, that's what happens. And I just stood there and I looked at him, and you know, I was just like, you know, looked at him, and I just stood there, and I knew he wasn't going to throw the first punch at me. And you know, I'm kind of like an intimidating guy. You know, I have a broad shoulders and a jaw, and like, you know, people aren't going to really like bully me or just like jump into a fight with me because they don't know, you know, what I got. Right. So I don't think he wanted to fight, but he needed to show off something in front of his wife or show his dominance. So I just let him speak, and I just stayed there, and my wife was right next to me, and I just didn't say anything, and he didn't do anything, and eventually it just dissipated.
Right.
You know, and there's that primal part of us that's like, man, I could have took care of that guy,
right.
and then what would have happened? So maybe maybe I would have, you know, knocked him out, And then everybody in the parking lot would have seen. The cops probably would have been called, and we probably would have both gone to jail.
Yep.
And then what?
Yeah.
You know, we both lose. Everybody loses.
Yeah.
And then the cops lose, and you know, it's like, who wants it? You know, and then my wife's scared and crying, and it's like, what the hell?
I talked to my buddy about that on the way here, and I said, listen, man, like we were talking about yesterday or the day before. I've had a strained relationship with my brother for years, and I felt like that was a block to my life force. You know what I mean? Having that like fractured relationship. And although I don't want to invite him back into my life, I needed to clear that energy. I need to clear it with him, forgive him for all the shit, and say, you know what, man, like, I'm sorry. I forgive you for what you've done to me, and I'm sorry for anything I've ever done to you. I'm not asking you to come back into my life. That's not what I want. I'm in a different place in my life now, but I want you to know that I forgive you, and like, I'm asking you respectfully, just don't hit me up anymore. Just stay away from me, and like, I just want to live my life, let you live yours. I wish you well and your family well. And
Is this your younger brother?
older brother.
Older.
Yeah, and I was holding on to this hatred for him, you know, and subconsciously, like not even realizing how much of that baggage I was holding on to. So when I was talking to my buddy, there's a guy that same thing where he has this primal like hatred for him. He's like, if I ever see him, dude, I'll fucking kill him. And I said, no, you won't. And he's like, yeah, I will. I'm like, no, you won't. I was like, because there's a part of you that knows intuitively that if you do that, you risk losing your family, your home, everything else. And I was like, you need to clear that energy with that guy, because it doesn't, like, the chances of you even running into him are slim to none anyway. And you're having all these stories going on in your head that it's just suffering. And I was doing the same thing with my brother, where I was like, I had all these stories that I was creating that it wasn't making me feel any better, you know?
And imagine if every man that had that energy was able to clear that energy, we would live in a different world.
Completely different world. And I feel like that's like been my biggest growth edge right now, is like really letting go of like old stories, letting go of like old hurts. And you know, people think like, oh, like they have a lot of pride and they hold on to this, like, I don't want to forgive that person, fuck that person, you know, I don't want to say that they fucked me, you know, fucked me over bad, I don't want to say sorry to them. It's like, it's not for them that you're saying sorry, man. It's not for them, it's for you.
Yep.
Let go of it, you know. And it felt really good. I kind of was gonna invite like my brother's energy into the room with like a pillow or with something, you know, and just have a conversation with him to let it go of my, and I was like, no, that wouldn't feel right. I want to send him the message so he hears like kind of where I'm coming from, and that felt good for me.
I think what it all boils down to is intention. You know, if your intention is pure,
yeah,
that's all we can do.
Right.
You know, we can have an intention each day when we wake up, and if it's to heal a relationship with our brother or our father or anyone in our life, you know, we can ask from a humble place. We can ask, you know, Creator, we can ask God, we can ask Spirit, whatever you want to call it, whatever you pray to. But that relationship needs to be one of humility. You need to be asking, right, a universe or something that you're actually a part of, and recognize that you're a piece in that larger picture.
Yeah.
And you're a very important piece. And when you understand that relationship and can dance with it, it's kind of like, of course, whatever God's will or whatever is meant to happen, you know, in that relationship will be manifested by your intention.
Definitely.
It might take a lot longer than you expect, but that's what's meant to be.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, if you're like, I want to heal this relationship today, and that doesn't go down, it's not that your intention was wrong, it's that you actually put a time constraint on your own intention. That's not being humble.
Right.
That's not humbly, you know, asking for guidance to a universe that is all-knowing.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically saying, oh, that I know better than that universe, right? Or that, you know, so it's almost like, you know, sometimes when I pray to heal a relationship, you know, my father is very sick right now. He's 75, you know, so when I pray for my father, it's like, you know, I pray that my father finds real medicine, and whatever that medicine may be, you know, I just pray and I hope that it's going to benefit him, and, you know, whatever resonates with him or whatever, you know, that may be, that's, you know, that's my prayer. Right. Whereas, like, I can share with him the medicines that I've done, I can share the plants that have worked for me, or the superfoods or this and that, and he doesn't always resonate with me. So really, it's just like, whatever is going to help this man, that is my intention, for him to find real medicine. And I don't care what it is, but that's my prayer.
Right.
I don't care what it looks like, but the intention is clear.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was your going on from high school? Like, share a little bit of your story, like kind of what happened when your parents got divorced and kind of what transpired after that.
Sure.
That got you onto this journey.
So at about age 15, I kept it together pretty well. I bottled up a lot of this stress and this tension, racial and socioeconomic, and I had a few friends that were close to me that had my back, and I was able to navigate pretty well. I was on the sports teams. I was the captain of the swim team in my sophomore year. I was a leader within the context of all, within all of those challenges that I was navigating, and I had good grades, and I was involved in the community of my high school,
right.
and so I had some good things going for me. But I think what happened was I got into some issues with some of the tough guys in my neighborhood, some of the tough guys at my high school, just over a couple things that transpired over a couple weeks. Somebody said something about somebody, and they told this guy, and it was just like, all ego stuff.
Right.
And then, my life was threatened.
Yeah.
And then there was this mode that I went into. It was actually, there was this tough guy in my neighborhood, and he would go around with a baseball bat, and I heard that he broke people's kneecaps, and I think I might have said something about him or his family. Who knows? I don't remember what it is, but we were punk kids, and that's what happened all the time. Mama jokes were just like an everyday thing. So we were like 15, and we would play basketball every day after school, and all of a sudden, I would go play basketball every day after school, on my block, where we lived in Riverdale, and it got to the point where I was actually scared to go play basketball in the same spot that I always came up to play basketball, because I knew these kids were out there like waiting for me.
Yep.
So I kind of started to hermit myself. I stayed at home. I hermited myself for like a week or two.
Yeah.
And then there was all this fear and all this what's the word? Anticipation or anxiety or life-threatening kind of fear, like all in my mind, like of what could happen. Like I'm fearing for my life, like, and it just bottled up and multiplied like a snowball. And I didn't have any of these things that I have today, like, ice baths or breath work or any of these ways to clear this energy. Nobody taught me how to clear emotional energy from my body. So it was just getting trapped up, and it got to the point where I wasn't sleeping. So there were a couple days where I didn't sleep, like literally 3 or 4 days. My mom started to worry about me, because it was mostly at her house.
Did she know like what was going on?
She kind of knew what was going on, but like there was nothing she could really do.
Right.
And it was just like a weird situation, and eventually I went into some type of psychosis, or I kind of lost it. I really became disconnected from myself and started to operate from this place of fear. So it got to this point where like I was like, well, you know what, if I'm not going to keep living in fear from these other people, so I'm just going to kill them all.
Yeah.
And here I am, like 15 or 16 years old. So I started, researching online, ways to build bombs and ways to like blow these guys up.
Wow.
And then my mom saw me like doing something in the bathtub one night, and she knew what I was doing. And that was the point where she called the cops. She flipped out, and they came and got me.
What were you doing?
I was building a bomb in my bathtub.
Oh, wow.
To take care of these guys that threatened my life.
Right.
All right, and I don't even know if I had the instructions right. I was so delusional and so out of center that I don't even know what I was doing. But I scared the crap out of my mom.
Right.
And this is something that I've never really told anyone. But I was, it was like I was in a psychosis. So my mom was very worried, and she cared about me, and it was like an angry at the world type of energy that I was, harboring inside me, and I think it was just the accumulation of all this pain and all this, the opposite of beautiful heart expression, right? Of all of this, like, just the culmination of just everything but love. Right. And so basically an ambulance came, got me, they strapped me down. I was very resistant. I was very like a force to be reckoned with. I've always had a lot of energy my whole life. So, they basically, kind of, it wasn't arrested, they didn't come to arrest me, because there was nothing like, it's not like my mom was like, oh, my son's a terrorist, come pick him up. It was more just like, I'm really worried about my son's mental health, can you come get? So an ambulance came and got me, and they, put me in the ambulance, and they took me to, this is actually one of two instances. There was another fight and instance that I had with my father that I think happened first. But anyway, they took me to Yale, New Haven hospital, and they did all sorts of tests on me, and they're basically like, everything's coming back okay. This, he's a healthy teenager, everything's okay. It just seems like there was something stressful. And
were you telling them, like, yeah, these people threaten my life, and I've been...
I wasn't very coherent.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't... My mind was racing so fast, and it was almost like I would share things and I would speak a mile a minute that nobody was really... None of the doctors or none of the people there really had the patience or understanding of everything that I was coming with, and I couldn't be calmed down.
Right.
So they sent me to another place, which was Westchester Juvenile Psychiatric Ward, and I was there for about a month and a half, hospitalized.
Fuck.
And that place was kind of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for kids.
Yeah.
Right. So there were a lot of children of drug addicts in there. There were a lot of pain in that place, and a lot of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, ADHD, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, just really like all of the things that society didn't want to deal with in the youthful population, right? So these kids were too young to be in prison.
Yep.
But I mean, this was basically prison for kids, and there were studies and research going on, and things that, there were multiple times I tried to escape, and there were multiple times I was injected with things to calm me down and put in straitjackets, and I was told that I was bipolar, right? That I had this bipolar disorder, and basically, that became a life sentence for me. They were like, you're bipolar, you really aren't fit for society, and you can't really control yourself, and your mood swings are, beyond your control, and you need to take these medicines in order to function in society.
Yeah.
And in order to get out of there, I had to agree to that. Otherwise, I'd probably, who knows how long I would have stayed in there, but I had to play nice at some point and had to stop trying to escape.
Yeah. And
that took me about 6 weeks to realize that I wanted my life back.
Yeah.
And the only way that I got out of there was by, taking, I was prescribed by PhDs and MDs the highest doses of lithium, Resveratrol, and Depakote. And, I went from a healthy weight of like 165, 170, which is my weight now, to about 230 pounds in the next 2 months after.
It's fucking crazy.
After being released, I started failing my classes. I had never failed a class before. I was a good student. I was a bright kid. I started drooling and falling asleep in class. I failed off the swim team as captain.
Wow.
My life just basically went to shit.
Yeah.
And I started getting into a deep, deep depression. I was now a fat kid, so now I was like the fat white boy in my high school. And even my friends were like, dude, what happened to you? Like, you're not the same Alex that we remember. Like, what happened to you, bro? Like, you don't even crack jokes anymore. You don't even have the same personality. You're like a different person.
Did you feel that difference? Could you tell? I know obviously you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like,
oh yeah.
But with all the medication, were you able to conceptualize like, fuck, dude, like what's happening to me? Like,
well, I knew that, my spirit was being sucked away.
Yeah.
And well, I didn't even know what a spirit was at that time, but basically, like, my self had been sucked away by these medications, and the more, it was about 6 months to, I think it was about 8 months that I was on those medications until my mom was able to sympathize with me and looked at me and said, something's not right here. Something's really, really not right here. I had put on 50 pounds. I was severely depressed. I didn't even want to get out of bed. I would drool, uncontrollably drool. I became a zombie.
Yeah.
I was no longer Alexander Hill. I became this drugged up, drooling thing.
Yeah.
And I was ready to take my own life.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most challenging and painful times ever in my life. I remember looking at my photo and pictures. I would take pictures with friends, or I'd be with my family and take a picture, and I would get so angry at my fat face and the acne and all the toxins that were in my body and everything, that I would rip up the pictures. If there were any pictures of me, I would rip them up because I hated myself so much.
Wow.
And I knew I was so far from my potential. I knew I was so far from like who I am and what I'm here to do. Looking at those pictures, I was like, that guy is not me.
Right.
And it was just really, really, really challenging. And yeah, so basically, long story short, my mom saw that first. My dad was still very scared because there was some borderline, physical altercations with my dad where we would butt heads, and he was kind of afraid at some points that I would fight him. Right. Or things like that. So he would kind of split custody, divorce arrangement. He would kind of make me take the drugs at his house, and then my mom started to ease up.
Yeah.
So it was one point where I wasn't taking any of the medication at my mom's house, and my mom was cool with that. But now I was still 2 or 3 days out of the week, I still had to take it at my dad's. Yeah. And eventually I stood up to my father and I said, listen, I haven't been taking these medications at mom's for months. It was a huge thing and blowout fight, but I just stood up for myself to take my life back, and I got off. Yeah. And then everything got better. Got back into the sports, got my grades back up, ended up actually pulling everything back together and getting a full scholarship to Vanderbilt.
Oh, wow.
Out of high school. So just
did you wean yourself, or did you just cold turkey it? Was you taking it still at dad's?
Yeah. I mean, they had me go from seeing a psychiatrist to a psychologist, and
right.
None of this ever really, these people I was speaking to never really understood me, or never really leveled with me, or they didn't treat me as a human being. They treated me as a patient.
Right.
And it was almost like, I'm the doctor, I'm the person who went to school for this many years, and I'm going to tell you what's right based on all this research that I learned in school.
Right. And
these initials at the end of my name.
Yep.
There was so much ego in it. It's laughable.
Still is.
And it's still there's so much ego in the medical world, and these people that went to school for so long that they think they know something. Right. And really, on this spiritual path, you and I both know that we don't know anything. Right. Nobody knows anything about anything.
Totally.
And to say that you know something enough to prescribe a poison to somebody else, it's like, wow. You better know at least a little bit about yourself, and you better know a little bit about where these medicines come from. And most of these doctors have no freaking clue about what they're prescribing to people.
Nah, and I think they generally want to help people. I think they don't get into that profession.
They're misinformed.
Yeah, I think some of them are misinformed, but I think people get into the profession of being a doctor, I think, genuinely to help people. But I think somewhere along the way, they kind of become a part of the system that we're all a part of. So it's like, who created this? Apologize to the plane going by, so that's what it is. I think we helped create some of the system that we're in right now, because people want an instant fix to their problems. They don't want to do any of the hard work, So it's like, I have this issue, I'm having a mental breakdown, what can you do for me? And doctors don't have the time to really break it down on a spiritual level. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to give you this pill. I hope it works. If that one doesn't work, we'll give you a different one. If you have side effects from that, we'll give you this pill to counteract those side effects. And next thing you know, you're on a plethora of drugs, and you don't even know how you fucking got there in the first place. And so I don't blame wholeheartedly. I had a lot of anger toward doctors when I got off all my drugs.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, these motherfuckers had me so doped up.
Yep.
I was on every drug, every opiate you can imagine, benzodiazepines, sleeping pills, Adderall, I was taking all of it. But I was like, I helped create. I had to own my side of the fence on that and be like, that they're just doing their job, and like I went to them and told them I had these problems. They were trying to fix my problem. You know, if I would have gone to a shaman, I'm sure he wouldn't have been giving me clonazepam. I'm sure he wouldn't have been giving me Ambien. He'd have been giving me the real medicine, you know? So I kind of, I've shifted my stance on that because I did have a lot of anger toward medical doctors, and now it's more like I feel for the people that are still stuck in that system. I honor the doctors that went into that profession to genuinely to help people. But I feel for the people that are stuck in the Western system because it's not helping them.
And at the same time, you know, compassion for everyone that's a part of my journey and this bigger picture journey. And, you know, it's all perfect.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, this is the way that it was designed.
Yep.
I was meant to take those medications at that point in my life. I was meant to go through all of that pain. You know, in the tribal cultures and there's something called an initiation into manhood.
Yep.
That was my initiation into manhood.
Right.
Getting myself off of those medications, I had to stand up to my father and proclaim, you know, this is who I am and I don't need these things. I don't care if this PhD or this MD told me that I was bipolar. I am not bipolar, and I refuse to accept that, you know, diagnosis. And from that point forward, it just disappeared.
That's crazy.
So you know, I wouldn't say I became a man that day. I still think there was a lot of repressed emotions and a lot of things that I didn't understand until, you know, maybe 10 years later when I got to sit with Sacred Plant Medicine and really uncover, you know, all of the stories and all of the pain that I had experienced for most of my life. And I believe that, you know, the programming and the untruths or the things that started taking me off course from the inner child, because I was a beautiful child, and I remember when my parents together, you know, I would sing in the car on road trips, and I would sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and all the pictures, I had huge smiles when I was 4 or 5 years old, you know, and then something shifted, and I think it was when I started going to school, and there's that question, what are you going to be when you grow up? And, well, I'm going to be me. You know, the inner child would just say, you know, I'm going to be me and I'm going to play and I'm going to have friends and, you know, and that's kind of where I'm at today. But for, I'd say, from the age of 6 or 7 to the age of 27, 28, I'd say over 20 years, that what are you going to be when you grow up really screwed me up. And that turned into how are you going to make money, and how does making money sort of like define you in society. And it, you know, it really comes down to survival instinct, because, you know, I basically made a contract with myself in this lifetime that I am going to make as much money as possible, because I equated that to happiness and I equated that to survival and basically freedom to do whatever I wanted to do with the money that I was making. So I basically became, you know, a money-making machine in real estate, and I was just very misguided, and it all came from myself. It all came from, like, you know, me absorbing much of, you know, what was around me, and, you know, just being a very sensitive human being. Just being a very sensitive human being and really having good intentions, but not having all of the information that I needed from good mentors or the people that, you know, and there might be a little bit of, like, a sense of, like, regret. Oh, I could have done it this way, I could have done it that way. But really, at the end of the day, there's no regret. And I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed to just have been on this journey, to find, you know, the sacred medicine, to have worked with indigenous people, to understand the technology of prayer, and to just, you know, start to live a spiritual life when most of my life was undisciplined and not spiritual.
What were some of the answers that you got from the sacred medicine? I mean, because, like, I know I've had a knowing for the last 9 years, 8, 9 years, that I was going to go down that path. Like, it's like I'm definitely going down that path. The calling's been there. I just haven't heeded that call yet.
Right.
And I've always had this thing, like, I'm going to get some answers that I'm seeking that I can't conceptualize. I can't, like, figure out, like, just in this waking consciousness, you know? So I feel like I need to go into a different realm to kind of get some of those answers. Mm-hmm. I guess my fear has always been, like, maybe losing a sense of control, because like safety has always been a big thing for me. That's one of them. And then the other one was, how would I integrate back into like real world society, you know? And I spent years like working in corporate America, making really good money and like doing my thing, and I just felt dead inside though. I was like, dude, I hate this. I absolutely fucking hate this. But sometimes in life, like, there's a practicality, you know? It's like I gotta provide for my family. I gotta make sure they have food and a roof over their head. But it doesn't need to be opulence either. You know what I mean? I don't need to have all this crazy big house and nice car. Like I'm selling my Suburban, you know, for example. Like, it's like, I don't need that.
Yeah.
For what? You know, it's a fully loaded Suburban. It's a nice car, but like, what do I need that for?
Yep.
Like, I if I didn't have like all my kids, like, I would drive a VW Bug and be just as happy, you know? So I'm going to sell it and buy a used car and that fits my family, maybe a minivan, who knows? And that's it, you know, put the rest of the money in the bank, and that's
or
it.
Or just put the money towards the things that, you know, you believe with. You
Right.
believe in podcast equipment and,
Yeah.
you know, websites to raise consciousness and
Yeah.
donations to people that need it.
Yeah, so what are some of the answers that you got from doing the medicine?
Wow, that's
Like, did you have an intention when you went?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, the first time, I wasn't even at the level of awareness to really understand the depth of what having an intention means.
Right.
So the first time, my intention, I had gone skydiving before.
Yeah.
And my intention when I went skydiving for the first time, I had been skydiving 3 times successfully.
Yeah.
Before sitting in my first sacred plant medicine journey. And not that these things are really related to each other, but they're both scary.
Yeah, it's letting go.
And there's also this element of, like, I could lose my life. At least there was this element of, you know, not too many people, you know, have died in plant medicine ceremonies, and I think maybe the handful or the small number of people that have had really, really scary experiences, that gets multiplied and, you know, exponentially, you know, with the internet and all those, like, stories or, you know, bad experiences could just get blown way out of proportion. When you actually look at, you know, the truth of the matter, I think it's a very small percentage. But and I think most people out there are carrying the medicine with good intention and in a good way. Most,
Right.
Not all.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are some people that integrity is compromised, and, you know, that's why, you know, I was very fortunate to get referred to the medicine by a friend who had experience with it, and, you know, sit with someone that had over a decade of experience, you know, training in Peru
Yeah.
with the indigenous people, and she was very clear on the lineage that she was bringing forth,
Right.
and very clear on the people that taught her the ways, and very clear on what she was carrying.
Yeah.
There's some shamanic practitioners or people that call themselves shamans out there that don't even announce or don't even share what lineage they're calling forth in their ceremony, and that's scary. Because the reason these lineages and the reason these prayers are brought forth, the reason these songs are brought forth, are to call on the generations and generations of ancestors from those tribes and from those lineages and cultures, and that inherently is spiritual protection. So, you know, depending wherever you guys are in your spiritual path, you know, the deeper you go, the more you understand that, you know, these native cultures and these tribes, they do things for a reason, and those reasons have been cultivated over hundreds, if not thousands of years, back to the dawning of, you know, these are, you know, the people that were here on this land, you know, in the United States and South America, like, they were the originals, right? So everything gets tied back into nature. So no matter what tribe or what culture, it all goes back to nature in their version and their interpretation from their grandfather's 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 grandfather.
Right.
So when you work with a lineage, you're working with someone who trains you most of the time from their grandfather's 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 grandfather.
Right.
And that information that's ancient wisdom, and that's priceless today.
Yeah.
And people are starved of wisdom, and everybody has knowledge. There's Google, there's all sorts of knowledge out there, but that ancient wisdom and that story and that where things come from and why they are done certain ways sacredly, going back to the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Lakota people, all of these things, and just really understanding what these lineages are and why they're here and how they can help us,
right.
And having that respect for them first and foremost. So I didn't have an intention the first ceremony I went into, but I was committed. I was committed to working on myself, and that's what I would say. I was committed to working on myself, and I knew that I was going to get through it no matter what, and I was ready to try it.
Yeah.
And then I think my consciousness shifted majorly in that first ceremony and subsequent ceremonies, that I was able to develop and cultivate what intentional work meant, what intentional work on myself would ultimately mean for my future.
Right.
And that's when, just a few ceremonies later, basically my whole life became intentional.
Yep.
And now everything I do is with intention. And if I don't have an intention, I have to pause and meditate and say, what's my intention here? Why am I doing this? Why am I speaking to this person? Why am I taking this call? And just go back to the drawing board, getting clear on what my purpose is. And I'm very clear on my purpose at this point. So it's
Share it. What is this?
It's to bring men together.
Huh?
Yeah, it's to bring men together, and I've started something called Man Tribe, and that's near and dear from my heart. And it started from this pure place in my heart of needing support on my own journey.
Yeah.
And doing these, it's funny, my partner Troy and I, we always say, working with sacred medicines and working with plant medicines in particular is not child's play. It's not something you just go do, recreationally. This is it's for most people, it's going to be a shift in their life, and it's going to be a shift to a lifelong path of reverence.
Right.
And of reverence for indigenous cultures and people, and humility. And so with that being said, I needed a lot of support.
Yeah.
I needed a lot of support, and I needed to know that as deep as I had gone on that path, that I had to bring all of that medicine back. I had to bring all of those lessons, basically all of those wounds, all of those pains that I've described in my story. We all have pain. We all have, challenges. I'm not saying to anyone that my pain is greater than their pain, or that my experiences are more challenging than anyone else's experiences. But going back into all of these parts of myself and realizing that I had a lot of work to do. The medicines helped me do that work, and they helped me see the parts of myself that I was not able to see otherwise. And the I believe in this, and in a lot of ways, getting to this spiritual awareness or this spiritual place, we don't need to do any plant medicine. Right. So but my path, it's almost like I had become, at age 27, I had become so far away from myself, chasing the dollar,
Yep.
that I needed drastic intervention. Because at 27 years old, I had something called arterial fibrillation, AFib. I had been pushing myself, like we were talking about before. It was work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
It was, work sometimes 14, 16 hours a day, grind, the New York grind, the New York hustle. And I pushed myself to a point where there was one night where, one day where I worked my butt off, and then went out partying to celebrate a deal, and then thought I could get back in the office like the right next day with like very little sleep. And then I was like, oh, I have a personal training appointment at noon with this new personal trainer. I think I'm going to go into that, and then, doing that assessment, and, I think it was do 20 push-ups. Let's see where you're at with your health. And then on 9, I passed out. My heart stopped, and I was, flat on the floor
Wow.
in the middle of Grand Central Equinox. And the personal trainer, tapped me on the shoulder, put some water on my face, and thank God I woke up. But that was probably my third near-death experience. And that's when I was like really, really woken up to the fact that I'm here to do something very, very different than what I had been doing. And that was commercial real estate in Manhattan. And I didn't know the how, I didn't know what it was, but I knew I needed to start taking care of myself. And whatever I was doing was not working. And I was sort of living a lifestyle that was going to kill me.
Yeah.
So I was very grateful for that experience and that wake-up call and being unconscious. And shortly after that was my first ayahuasca experience. So I basically experienced that DMT state, that letting go of, being dead for maybe a few seconds and then coming back.
Yeah.
So I had some, and that was like my second out-of-body experience, but that was like really confirmation that there's something greater than me and my own ego.
Isn't that crazy that sometimes we have these experiences that give us, like, as a near-death experience, gives us that wake-up call that we need, And I think as a kid, I drowned in a pool. I wasn't breathing, no heart rate, seizure from lack of oxygen in my brain because I was underwater for so long. Mm-hmm. They had me in the hospital for like 3 weeks doing like brain scans and whatever. I caught myself on fire once on accident. Luckily, I didn't burn to death, and I didn't get burned at all. Actually, the oil stayed on my pants, and I was able to roll enough to get it off of me. Attacked by a German Shepherd, 450 stitches in my face, reconstructed all my sinuses,
Wow.
Plastic surgery, the whole deal. And I think I knew from a very young age that, like, call it God, universe, whatever, that I was here for a bigger purpose. Because if that wasn't the truth, then I would be dead. Like, I wouldn't be here. And it seems like the people that are making the biggest shifts in the world are usually those people that have experienced near death, where it's like, and they came back on the other side and been like, no, I have a bigger mission now. I need to do something bigger.
It's all perspective, and it's those people that have experienced pain or hardship. Yeah. It's not that they have a bigger role. It's just that they've been to some pretty dark places.
Pain's a great teacher.
And it's like all of those wounds or all of those dark places can be filled with gold, can be filled with light, and when you go back and relive those experiences or begin to understand why these things happen to you, you can understand where your healing powers reside.
Who told you about ayahuasca? Being in New York, it doesn't seem like in my opinion of New York, doesn't seem like a place where you would get
one of my very, very dear friends. She lives here in Venice, not too far from here.
Right.
And she was doing the New York hustle and New York grind, and I just trusted her. She's just one of those people that come into your life, and you can just trust.
Yeah.
So I had known her for some time, and she said, I tried this plant medicine, this was 6 years ago, and I as soon as she said the words, we were actually at a bar, and I was having a beer, and she wasn't drinking, and she had beers with me before,
yeah.
And she wasn't drinking, and I was drinking, and then she said, well, you should come try this, and I put down my beer. It's probably one of the first beers I didn't finish in like who knows how long, because I was always drinking my beers and drinks to the end, right?
Yep.
So I said, I said, wait a minute. So if I'm gonna go do this thing, this ayahuasca thing, I have to stop drinking? And she's like, absolutely. And I'm like, all right, tell me more.
Yeah.
All right. And then she's like, well, you have to do this diet too. I'd never dieted.
Yeah.
I was like, I can eat whatever I want, for most of my life, and I got away with eating whatever I wanted for most of my 20s, and probably overeating and over drinking for most of it.
Yep.
But at the something about it. It was just one of those instances where I put my beer down. I didn't finish that beer, and I just listened to her, and I said, okay, let's do it in 2 weeks. Are you gonna do it again with me? And she said yes. And that's all I needed, and I got that support, and I just trusted her, and and 2 weeks later, for those 2 weeks I went vegan.
Nice.
And I did the Purium cleanse for the first time, and that actually was very, very healthy, and I started feeling better by the day. And then sure enough, I ended up going and doing some plant medicine 2 weeks later, and it was just such a life-changing experience, and I haven't been the same since that experience. Yeah. And
how did you integrate, like, getting the knowledge and the wisdom that you got from the plant medicine? How did you integrate that back into real life? I mean,
Sure.
You're going from like a successful real estate agent and crushing it and on the grind, and then you do the plant medicine. I'm sure, I've never done it, but I'm sure you have some kind of awakening, and you get like certain kind of wisdom that you've never had before. How did you integrate that back into like real society?
Yeah, have you ever heard, I feel like in our generation, just growing up, they're like, oh, the human brain, we only use 10% of our brains.
Yeah.
So imagine one night you go and sit in a ceremony and all of a sudden you're using 100%.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. It's also really, really scary. Because if most of us are using 10%, and then you just experience what using 100% is like, or 99%.
Yeah.
Maybe there's 1% that still hasn't woken up, but when you get lit like that, or you get activated like that, you get connected like that. It's really just connected to source, right? And this is. These are states that yogis and monks and masters reach without any substance whatsoever, right? These are states of, awareness and consciousness that exist, and that is human potential, right? So, for people that are waking up on this planet, there's a lot of medicines and mushrooms and psilocybin and LSD and a lot of tools that are being used to kind of, as shortcuts to get to these places. But these states can be reached by breath work. These states can be reached without any plant medicine, and certainly the plant medicine will fast track, but on the same side of that coin of like you're getting a fast track or you're getting a shortcut to that consciousness also comes the integration. And the integration is the other side of that coin, which is like, okay, you got some insights here. How are you going to bring those insights back and integrate those into your life, into the job that you might hate?
Right.
You might realize how much you actually hate your job that you've been working at for 10 years. Now what are you going to do?
Yep.
That's the work. So it's almost like you can go sit in a ceremony, but the ceremony begins kind of after that ceremony. What you take back with you, what you integrate into your life. What does your practice look like? Are you doing qigong every day? Are you doing things like ice baths every day? Are you working out? How are you working out, and how is that integrated into your purpose and what you're here to do? Right. Are you building muscle just to look good? How is that going to shift? Like, what are you really here to do? Are you a model? Are you a bodybuilder? Are you here to look good and inspire people? Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe there's something even bigger than that. So I would just say the integration is the ceremony, and it's easy to keep doing a substance. It takes a lot more discipline to provide the adequate integration for every cup of ayahuasca that you drink or every mushroom that you take, and to integrate that into the real world.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say the real world. I don't even like that description.
But I think
because it's all real.
Yeah, but I think people know like what your meaning is.
It's all real, but like, how are you showing up? Yeah. How are you showing up to help people that might not have access to those things or might not be ready to do those things too?
Right.
Because and how are you just showing up every day in your life, and how are you using this knowledge of self to essentially give your gifts in this world, and that's what your purpose is.
It's crazy because like there are certain people that I've met, and this has been a judgment of mine for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. The like the LA vibe, if you will, the Hollywood, Venice, whatever area. There's always like a vibe to it to me, where it's like kind of like a snobby, pretentious. I didn't like it. I was like, I just don't feel it at all. And I was hanging out with my brother and his friends, and I was like, this isn't my thing, at all. But meeting you, it's like. It's completely different. completely different to me. It's like, wow, like you've done the work. And so that's like, it shows me that like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm on the right journey. Because like, I think there's people that you'll meet on this journey you're going through, and it's like, maybe that's not a good interpretation of what you're looking for. Maybe that's not like really where you want to go with your life, you know? Because there are people that use the plant medicine in a way of escaping. You know, it's more of a recreational type deal, and it becomes like they look at other people who haven't done it like, bro, you haven't done ayahuasca? What's wrong with you, bro? And it's like, yeah, that's just not part of my path yet, you know?
There's, and I totally respect that, and that awareness right there is more valuable than any substance you can put in your body.
Right.
And you know, it's like that escaping that you're talking about. People do all sorts of things.
Yep.
Coffee is an escape.
Yeah.
Coffee is an escape into so-called being more productive. Well, where you have that energy inside of you, why do you need coffee?
Yeah.
You know, why do you need coffee? Some people need coffee to get out of bed in the morning. You can't even like get out of bed and start the day. Well, that's a serious thing to look at.
Yep.
Do you hate your job so much that you need coffee? You need 2 cups of coffee in the morning just to get there.
Yeah. It's insane, dude. That's been like one of the last retreat I went to. The thing that I came to was like, in what ways am I checking out of my life? In what ways am I refusing to do the work and like really dive deep into what the core of the issues are? So like, for example, you know, if my wife and I were having a disagreement, and instead of me meeting her from the empowered man, I would meet her from like the wounded child. You know, it's like, you know, she hurt me, you know, like she's like rejecting me, she doesn't want to have sex with me, or whatever the case may be. So instead of having that conversation with her and expressing some of that hurt and addressing it with her from an empowered state, it's like, oh, I'll just check out and go watch porn, because that's so much easier, you know, than having to like have the hard conversations.
Yep.
So one of the things I do, or that I did the last week, was my screensaver on my phone is a picture of me as a kid, and it's a constant reminder to take care of that little boy that's inside of me, and it's also a constant reminder to tell myself, where am I meeting people from?
Yes.
And where, like, if you're coming at me and you're talking to me a certain way and I may not like it or may not whatever, am I being reactive? Am I really taking in everything you're saying? And like, am I meeting you where you are? And that's the other thing that I've been doing lately is like, there were certain people in my life that I was getting so angry that they weren't meeting my expectation. You know, like, you're not meeting my expectation because you're not meeting me halfway, it felt like. But at a certain point, you come to understand that like, you're just meeting people where they are. There's no need to overstretch yourself. You know what I mean? Like with my father, that's a prime example. Like, I had so much hurt where it's like, dude, why does he want to be a part of my life? Like, what's going on here? Like, it's so weird. And a lot of hurt, a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. And lately, that all dissipated because it's like, I'm just gonna meet him wherever he is. Like, I'm not. There's no need to like. He's giving me whatever he's capable of giving me. You know, what life did he have? You know, who are his parents? What love did he get? What is he capable of giving me? Same thing with my mom. For the first time ever, I was able to find compassion for her story. For the longest time, I couldn't do that. I was so resentful about all the things that happened to me as a child. It's like, where the fuck was my mom? You know, all this shit was happening.
The blame.
Yeah. And now it's like, I have compassion. Dude, she was 17 years old with 2 kids. Yeah. She was a kid with 2 kids trying to figure it all out. You know?
Now you know a little bit about what that's like.
Yeah, totally, man. So it's like, for me, it's been like meeting people where they are and not being so full of judgments, you know, and not having like not putting like unrealistic expectations on people. You can have like you know, like for example, today's podcast, like I feel terrible if I don't meet a time commitment. It's like I said I would be here at 9 for the podcast and traffic happened and this and that, but it's like I was up at 4:30. I could have left earlier, but it's like I had to get my son to school and like I was trying to like time it all right. But like I always want to stay in integrity with things. So like that's why like when I text you, I sent you a screenshot of the GPS just so you knew that like I was in integrity still. Like it's like I was on my way. I just couldn't control traffic.
Yeah, but you know, there was something about you when I met you that I felt your integrity from when I met you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And had I not felt that, I might have went into a story like, oh, this dude, really? He thinks that he can be, 20 or 30 minutes late. But I didn't have that at all. And something just like, it's all perfect. Yeah. And something inside me was just like, it just all aligns.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I used to be very, very hard on time. And, if people were late, I really do believe that, our integrity is tied to our word.
Right.
And we do the best that we can, but navigating the spiritual communities and all these people, sometimes people are late, and you don't got to be anal about it, but it's all perfect.
Yeah,
It's all perfect, and whatever time that we do get and whatever ends up unfolding is exactly what is meant to happen.
Absolutely.
So it's just like when you have that acceptance with the relationships with your family members, with your mom and your dad and all of these things, it's like it just takes a load off your shoulders.
Totally.
Because you can realize that it's just all perfect.
Right. I shared that with my buddy, the other day. I was like, we all have soul agreements, I think everyone comes onto this planet, this incarnation, like, you can believe whatever you want. For me personally, I believe everything's energy. So it's like, if it's all energy and I came down into this physical body, like, I think the experiences that I experience along the way are just soul agreements that I've had with these people or experiences. And it's like, they're all teachers. It's all teaching me something.
Yes.
And I think, like, as I progress through this journey and wherever my energy goes when I leave this physical body, it's like, I think it's going to be a continuance of continuing to learn and becoming that oneness with the universe and oneness with nature and oneness with everything. And it's awesome. I got to have this conversation with my 12-year-old last night because he asked me, like, what happens when we die? And I was like, yes. I was waiting for that question.
Yeah, I think it comes down to two things: reconnectedness and remembrance.
Oh yeah.
We're just continually becoming reconnected to things we forgot about.
Right.
Reconnecting and remembering. We're so our soul signature, our intelligence, our capabilities, our potential, human superpowers, all of these things, whatever you want to call them, are just beyond our wildest dreams.
Yep.
And we're just beginning to untap what they are and learn what they are. And I think, the more that we can connect with each other and do things like these, do things like this podcast, or, bring men together with Man Tribe, or come together in community, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like in your local community or your city or wherever you grew up, or with your family, just coming together in more of an intentional way and in community, caring and loving and supporting, the people that we're around every single day. I mean, that's what we're here to do. And then all the magic will result from that.
Totally. What is Man Tribe? Why don't we go into that? Like, how did Man Tribe start? What is it? What's the intention of Man Tribe? Where do you see it going, and all that?
Sure. So Man Tribe was kind of a vision that I had for knowledge, brotherhood, and support. So, I needed to learn more about the human body. I needed to learn more about movement and nutrition and all of these things to continue the journey that I was already on. But what I realized was that I didn't have the support that I needed. I didn't have a group or a tribe around me. And I had done a lot of one-on-one coaching. I had worked with a lot of mentors and different people. And it was kind of like they were teachers, and I learned a lot of knowledge from them, but I didn't get a lot of support, right? Some of them were, high-level coaches or different types of trainers, and they were great, but they were also very busy. So they would have programs, or we would do one-on-one coaching, and I just didn't feel like anybody was on this journey with me.
Yeah.
I felt like somebody was kind of like talking down to me a little bit,
Right.
and that I had to like get my stuff together, and I was kind of like very alone.
Yeah.
And then I did my first group coaching program with men, and that was a game changer. That changed my life. That changed the way that I thought about brotherhood. It changed the way I thought about men. And I started to trust men again, because I think it's really easy on this journey, along the way, a lot of men develop a distrust of men in order to protect ourselves. And it's almost like other men are the enemy, or we're all competing, to gain our position in this masculine fight for survival and for dominance, right? And that, I believe, is old paradigm thinking. I believe that thinking is not going to get you to this new level of consciousness that we're going into today.
Yep.
So, having conversations like these where you and I are, strong males in their power, opening their hearts to each other, this is the level that is required for this planet to heal. This is the level that is required for this planet to evolve.
Totally, man.
And it starts with men, and that's why, you know, we do Man Tribe. It's really just to support each other in our greatness, to support each other in rising to our greatness, and just showing up, letting that guard down, that guard that we've had for so long to protect ourselves, and realizing that that guard doesn't need to be up when you're in the right container and you establish, you know, the rules or the guidelines of that container, and everybody's in agreement. We are so powerful. We are so powerful. And I say Man Tribe is like a peloton. You know, it's like, imagine Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France, you know, in a peloton. And sure, he's a fast cyclist. He might be one of the greatest that ever lived, right? And he'll get his time in the front of that peloton, and he'll give it his all, and that peloton will move quickly behind him, and he'll break the wind. And then when his muscles start to gain that lactic acid and he gets tired, he's going to shift to the back of the peloton and start to ride the resistance. And it's about 30% easier in the back than it is in the front.
It's a trend.
That's how a pack works. That's how a pack of wolves, you know, each wolf has their own little task, and they're all delegated in the animal kingdom. And that's how it works, you know, in leadership. That's how it works in a tribe. It's like, sure, there might be a chief, or there might be somebody, you know, with chief duties, but every single person in that tribe is keeping that tribe alive and keeping the survival going and keeping everyone sharp in their purpose.
Yeah, it was a trip. We did this work where we put a blindfold on and earplugs, and we'd have another man guide us through the woods. And I was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" You know?
Oh, bro.
Yeah. So like my whole life has been about like protecting and safety and this and that, not letting go of that need, those walls that were up, you know, and trusting another man. And so the first part of the exercise was pick one person in the tribe that we trusted the least.
Yes.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, number one, it's awkward, you know, because like I don't want to be like a dick, you know, but like, so I picked the youngest guy in the group, a guy I would never take into a bar fight with me, and a guy that like I felt like was physically a lot weaker than I was. As I'm picking him on purpose, you know,
which was all like old programming stuff.
Totally,
like,
totally.
You know, judgment for your own survival, so to speak.
Right. So I pick him, and we go out to the woods, and we're doing this work where I have a blindfold on and earplugs, and he can only touch me with 2 fingers to keep me from danger. There's cliffs, dude. There's like trees and rocks and shit, you know.
Wow.
Dude, I took my blindfold off, and dude, I was full of tears, dude. Like, I had never let my guard down that much to trust another man with my vulnerability like that ever. And it was powerful, man. And it really opened me up to understand that sense of community, that sense of like, wow, dude, I feel so supported right now.
It's funny, I've done a similar exercise,
Yeah.
and there weren't any cliffs or anything like that, so I was a little less scared,
Right.
because I didn't think my life was in danger. But it's funny because it all comes down to communication. When you have your eyes are being blocked, you need to trust in your sense of listening and hearing this other man who is guiding you. Take a few steps this way, take a few steps that way, go to your right, go 90 degrees this way, right? So I did the same exercise with a partner, and what came up for me was that if this guy wasn't directing me, and he was silent for a couple seconds, or wasn't giving me the guidance, that I would almost like get scared a little bit. Right? So it was almost like these questions of trust started to pop up, like, hey bro, are you there? Okay, yeah, he's like, yeah, bro. He's like, you're walking straight for 50 feet. I'm like, well, just tell me that. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know it was 50 feet. I just keep walking strait. And
that was part of that journey. Was at the beginning of the exercise, he was talking to me.
Yeah.
And then the next part, then they ring I think it was a drum. They hit the drum, and then after that drum beats, he doesn't talk to me at all.
Right.
And he's allowed to put his hands on my shoulders. And then the third part of it was no communication, and he could only touch me with 2 fingers.
Wow.
And so, like, I have no clue.
So they were very different exercises, actually.
Yeah, so each one of them was a little bit different, and it got you prepared for the last part of it. And so that's, for me, why I was so emotional, because I was like, dude, I've never allowed myself to even trust.
Yep.
That, like, I always felt like I had this sense of, like, people were out to get me almost in a way. You know what I mean? Like, I need to have my guard up all the time. And I was closing myself off to, like, valuable connections I could have had with people because I was so rigid and, like, closed. And I was like, wow. So it felt beautiful to let that all open and, like, trust this man that I perceived to be weak and he's guiding me and protecting me and making sure that I'm safe. I was like, wow. So it really opened me up to that new sense of like community, like what sounds like Man Tribe is just like, a brotherhood of men that are like supporting one another.
Yeah, and it's been a local community here in Venice, and we've gotten some amazing facilitators that just show up.
Yeah.
And it's almost like sometimes we have 4 or 5 all-star facilitators here. We have like Rudy Reyes, Raw of Earth, Troy Casey, and it's almost like we're overloaded on powerful facilitators sometimes, and we're realizing that the next step is to do more of these Man Tribes in different parts of this city, in different parts of California, and ultimately in other states too. And what we want to do is we want to roll out what we've created, because we have a system here and we have this beautiful way of bringing men together. And there's something that works right here in Venice, and it might not work exactly the same, but we want to offer that model, and we want to tweak it for the different cities and the different geographic areas that we want to bring this medicine to. So really it's just the medicine of brotherhood, it's the medicine of community, and it's just incredible what it's done for my life in the past year. I feel like I've showed up because I've had these groups weekly with these brothers for maybe 2 or 3 hours. Like my level of integrity, my accountability with myself and my friends, I mean, it's almost like hundreds of men. I think it's over thousands of men have come here to this backyard and experienced Man Tribe. So we're really rolling this thing out with the purest intention to serve, and we're talking about that right now, and we have some investors and some people that are supporting that vision and the mission.
You guys just did a retreat too, right?
We did.
How was it?
It was our first overnight retreat, and we had 50 men show up.
That's awesome.
It was a 3-day retreat on the weekends, and it was in October. Yeah. And we're just getting the testimonials in now from the guys, but for most of them, I think, if not all of them, it was a life-changing experience. It was certainly a life-changing experience for me and for Troy. It was just very, very powerful, and it was almost like we had so many facilitators. We had 3, indigenous medicine men there. We had 3 elders there that were, facilitating and sort of, spiritually advising us, from their experience and from their ways. And it was really an honor to be able to learn from them and to be a part of their ceremonious ways. Yeah. It was just the utmost care, love, and intention, being brought to the men that we brought mostly from Los Angeles out into nature to experience things like sweat lodges and these sacred ways, and honoring that, just being able to do these things and honor them, and to have all of these facilitators and have all of these, different pieces of knowledge and wisdom that we can bring back into our everyday lives. Yeah. So many of these guys were already on a spiritual path of, doing plant medicine or things like that, and they were able to get integration tools. We had Mick Dodge, nice. who is a total legend. He was on National Geographic, and this guy's a wild nature man. He's an incredible source of knowledge and wisdom, and he also, he has hammers and boulders and weights that he forges out himself. Yeah. And if you want to talk about grounding, I think grounding and earthing and rooting are all very similar in what they mean. And I think getting your physical body empowered. Yeah. It could mean lifting weights, it could be walking barefoot or running barefoot. But what all of that is it could be lifting weights barefoot. Right. It could be a lot of different things, but you're basically getting connected with the earth, with weight on your shoulders or weight, on your body. Yeah. All it is just amplifying gravity to connect you deeper. Yeah, for sure. Through your feet into the earth, and the earth is medicine.
Yeah. Where do you see Man Tribe going? Like, if you were to pick like the main intention of Man Tribe, like where do you see it in the next, year to 5 years?
That's a great question. I actually haven't fully hashed that one out. We're following the energy. We're planning for the next few months. We're planning for the next year. But if you asked me a year ago if I thought that we would have 50 people in my backyard and creating this buzz on Instagram and just getting hit up by people from all over the world that are interested in doing man tribes,
Yeah.
in different states and different cities throughout the world. Like, I would have never even imagined this. So I'm staying very much open in what this beautiful thing that we've created is and where it can go. And I think the core thing that is Man Tribe is at the very base of it, it's a name.
Yeah.
Man. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be in a tribe?
Yeah.
And just those two questions right there will keep us busy for a lifetime.
Yeah, and I think I could see or I can feel from you teacher energy, like a mentor, and I think maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys have already thought of this, but starting a mentorship, to where it takes Man Tribe to other parts of the world, other parts of the country, with almost as I'm not gonna say maybe affiliate, or a franchise.
Yeah, we're talking about launching and expanding with the affiliate model, very similar to what CrossFit did.
Yeah.
So we have a really good network. One of the things that Man Tribe has brought is an incredible network of hundreds of men at this point. So we are an incredible network of hundreds of men, and the things that have become possible, are way beyond my own personal abilities.
Right.
So it's just yes,
awesome.
Yes to all of it.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Yes.
What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Come to a Man Tribe.
Okay,
heart to heart. Come right here, my backyard, every Friday, 5:30, here in Venice.
Yeah.
We're gonna be doing more Man Tribe events on November 23rd. I don't know if this will be out by then, but we have a full day intensive in Santa Barbara, and then right before New Year's on December 27th to 29th, we have a 3-day Man Tribe Winter Warrior Immersion.
Okay.
And that will be in Weldon, California.
Nice.
At the Purium Oasis.
Is there a website where people can go to get information, or Instagram, or plug all of them?
Yeah, mantribe.me is the website. So instead of .com, it's .me, and then man.tribe is our Instagram, and then we're also on Facebook, man.tribe.
Dang it, man. I'm going to ask you a couple questions that I ask everyone that comes on the podcast. The first one being is, if you had one person or one book that inspired you the most your entire life, who would that person be, and what would that book be, and why?
You threw me off because I'm thinking of a person. That definitely wasn't a book. I love books.
It doesn't have to be. Some people say both. Some people just say one or the other. It doesn't matter.
My grandfather.
Yeah.
And I have two grandfathers that were great men. And one of them was, really both of my grandfathers. One of them, they were leaders in their communities.
Yeah.
My grandfather on my father's side was a fire chief in New York City. So he would go into burning buildings. He started out going into burning buildings and saving people, and then he became a leader and chief of firefighters.
Yeah.
So, he served. My other grandfather was in the military, and he was a geologist and professor in Michigan, and he served his community well. So just honoring both of those men, and they are in me.
Yeah, for sure.
So the more that I can honor my ancestors and the people that gave me life, the more that I can learn about myself, and I've had so many great mentors and partners and people, and I could list 100 of them for you right now.
Right.
But I think keeping it inward and keeping it into the people in my lineage.
Yeah.
To truly understand, like you said, teacher energy. Like both of my parents were teachers.
Yeah.
My mom's right over there, and she was a phys ed teacher and coach and amazing athlete, and inspired so many people.
Right.
With the work she did. And my dad was a physical educator too, and coach and lifeguard trainer, and taught people CPR and how to save lives. He saved a number of lives. So there's been a lot of teaching and life saving, you know, in my life. And you know, one of the reasons we started Man Tribe is the suicide rate amongst males in the United States is up 40% in the past decade.
Yeah.
So it's higher than it's ever been. So I feel like with all the events that we've done, I guarantee you we've saved some lives.
Definitely.
We've inspired some people that have inspired some other people and helped some people get out of depression. And there were some people that have come along that have been from pretty low places. And you know, suicide is not a common thing that gets brought up, but there are many men that have been to the circles that I am a part of, and it's not uncommon to hear that word.
Oh, for sure. They feel so alone. You know,
Or at least, you know, when we get vulnerable and we share about, you know, things in our past, I'd say for probably a good percentage of us have had some kind of relationship with that word at some point in our life, you know, or even thought about it.
Totally.
Right. So I think just going to that place of vulnerability just brings us back into gratitude, and in a lot of ways, I'm here to serve, and I'm here to love, and to serve. Yeah.
The other question I want to ask you is if you had one lesson that you learned your entire life, like a lesson that you learned that maybe caused you a lot of heartache, and you could save somebody else from having to experience that heartache, what would that lesson be that you'd want to teach either a younger version of yourself or just a younger person that hasn't been initiated into manhood yet? What would that lesson be you'd want to share with them?
Well, to the average person, man or woman, I would just say, you know, it's all perfect, and, you know, don't beat yourself up, because I noticed that I've been really, really hard on myself for a lot of my life, and trying to speed things up or trying to make things happen that were out of alignment, and really just coming back into that heart space. So to anyone, you know, man, woman, you know, boy or girl, you know, at any stage of their life, find ways to get into your heart. Find the things that light you up and bring you into your heart, because for the scientists out there and the people that, you know, are not into, you know, a lot of the spiritual woo-woo stuff, the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the brain electromagnetically. When they measure the brain waves and they measure, you know, in these readings. So with that being said, I mean, there's all different types of people. There's analytical people, there's people that are more heart-based, there's musicians, right? So with that being said, where do you want to operate from? Because right here is where we connect with each other.
Yeah.
The heart hug. There's so many things, you know, open your heart, you know, cacao ceremonies. It's all with this idea of connecting with each other from the heart, not the mind, because the mind will give us a million reasons, a million judgments, a million things to protect ourselves or to look out for or to be disconnected from each other, especially processing all the things that, you know, we've grown up with or the things that are in our environment today. But I guarantee that if you're tuned into this place, that this energy is the most powerful.
Yeah, it's going to change the world, man.
Just encourage, you know, it's almost cliche. You hear like, oh, listen to your heart, you know, or tune into your heart, but like actually really, like to feel like the power of what that means, to really tune into that energy and meditate into the power of the heart, and that's driven everything that's happened great in my life recently. Man Tribe was started from my heart. And then the how, you know, all of the logistics, all of the things, and, you know, the incorporation and all of that just aligns because the mission and the purpose is clear. And I wake up every morning knowing what I'm here for, knowing where my heart is.
Yep.
All of the, you know, all of the things, they just get done.
Yep.
You know, and I'm saying, you know, I'll ask myself, I say, you know, if I can't do this, you know, what feels right? Who's the person that feels right to help me with this?
Yeah.
And that answer will come from not really from my mind. It was almost like when you came over here. When I first met you, I had a feeling about you from my heart, not from my mind.
Right.
You know, I can say, oh, he's got these tattoos and he's got, you know, he looks different than me, or he wears plaid shirts, and like I don't wear plaid shirts. And like, come on, really?
Yeah.
No, I was just like, I looked at you in your eye and I just felt something. And I can't describe it in words, but I'm like, I trust this guy.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're a little bit late and it didn't even faze me. You're a little bit late today. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's all perfect. You know what I mean? So just like, just this knowing, this deep knowing that we are like super intelligent if we're in our hearts.
Absolutely. There's a speech by Charlie Chaplin. I forget what movie it was on. He's dressed like Hitler in the movie, like it's like a spoof on Hitler or whatever. Yeah. But he, one of the things he says in the speech is, "We think too much and feel too little."
Yes.
And you know, we need, instead of like cleverness, we need gentleness and kindness. And it's so funny, man. That was like one of the biggest takeaways on my spiritual journey so far, is learning to feel more than I think.
Yes.
Because I've been crippled before with anxiety and panic and all these other things, social anxiety, and just, you know, shutting myself out from the world. And when I learned to like tap into my body and what I'm feeling and not be so analytical and thinking about everything, my life just takes on a whole new meaning.
Yes.
It's like way different, you know, and I feel different, you know.
Yeah, and you know, really the basis, you know, like what I would say to that young boy or that teenager who was going through some stuff is, it's okay to feel.
Yeah, totally.
And that's basically one of the main messages at Man Tribe when we do our fire circles.
Yeah.
Is we're sharing that wisdom.
Yep.
And not only are we saying that it's okay to feel, but usually if I'm going to lead a vulnerability exercise,
Yeah.
I show or I speak about something in my past where I'm like, listen guys, I'm sharing with you what happened and how I feel about it.
Yep.
And a lot of times it's shame, or a lot of times it's grief, or a lot of times it's regret. But when a man opens up like that, it's a ripple effect. And then all of a sudden our guards come down and we realize that we can all feel.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this work.
That's the healing I did with my son just recently, actually. I gave him I wear a Labradorite necklace, you know, and so he asked me about it. The first thing he asked was, "Dad, are you turning into a hippie?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." You know, like, yeah, I love it. And he's like, "Please don't," you know, and so we had a little talk about it and whatever. And then the next day or maybe 3 days later, he's like, "Hey, Dad, can I wear your necklace?" I was like, "That's interesting." And so I went on to my men's retreat. I came back, and I bought him a Labradorite necklace for himself, and I gave it to him. And one of the things I shared with him was that I said, "I did a bad job in the beginning of your life being your dad." And he's like, "No, you've been an amazing father. You've been an amazing dad." I said, "No, but one of the things I didn't do right was I didn't allow you to feel. I wasn't allowing you to like feel all the emotions you're feeling. You're an amazing, loving, compassionate, empathic boy, and like I wasn't allowing you to do that. I was kind of shutting you down, like stop crying, this and that, the typical man bullshit." And what I was unfortunately raised with, and I don't ever want to raise my sons that way. I have 4 sons, and it's like I want them to be strong men, but at the same time, I want them to know that it's okay to feel. It's actually important. It's imperative to shift the paradigm.
Bring them to Man Tribe, baby.
Yeah, totally, dude. Well, thank you so much, brother, for letting us, do this podcast here and inviting me into your space. And I love what you guys are doing. I think it's incredible. And if there's anything that I can ever do to help promote it in any way and be a part of it in any way, I'm more than willing. And
well, you're always invited here, and would love to talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
All right, brother.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.